A media titan is officially on the auction block. A legendary director gets massive capital injection for his most anticipated sequel, and the major African awards show kicks off. We are covering the stories reshaping Hollywood and beyond. My name is Papa Utu, and welcome to the Film Mandate. Welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions, both from the African front and the international scene. And thanks for joining me for this episode. And in today's episode, we'll be covering the Warner Brothers Discovery finally officially announcing that they are considering all options to put the company on sale, having received unsolicited offers from some of the major studios in Hollywood. And you will know that Warner Brothers has some of the most lucrative franchises, such as DC Studios, HBO, CNN, and also the Harry Potter franchise. We'll also be shifting from this story to California Film Commission offering such lucrative tax incentives for about 52 projects that will be shot in Hollywood. And leading the pack of all these particular projects is Michael Mann's Heat 2, which is will be about 30 years after the original was shot, and they are receiving about $37.2 million tax incentive for this particular project. And from there, we'll be moving to the final story, and that has to do with South Africa's national film and television awards finally kicking off by opening a portal for audiences who want to see their films win, tendering their votes. So we'll be talking about all these stories right here on the Film Mandate. So starting with the very first one, Warner Brothers, this is literally an open secret for several weeks or perhaps even months. Most film pundits with or scoopers with insights as to what is happening in the business world of film in Hollywood have always sort of projected that David Zaslav is sort of up in Warner Brothers for sale since the time he took over from AT&T with the merger of Warner Brothers and Discovery. And even though it's been an open secret, never has there been a time when he and the company has finally, in a way, admitted that they are considering all the offers being made by these major studios, leading the pack in terms of these major studios making unsolicited offers. Leading the pack is Paramount, which amazingly, quite recently, did actually go on a merger with Paramount Studios. And David Ellison, who is the boss, or who was the boss of Skydance, merged their company with Paramount in an $8 billion bid. And it looks like they are gunning up to potentially rope in the Warner Brothers media titan of a company into their fold. But unfortunately, in a recent event organized, I think, by Bloomberg, he didn't make known that, but around the same time, it looks like David Zaslav rejected that particular offer. And this has to do with the fact that it looks like the offer made by David Ellison and his team, they saw it as a low ball, where they were said to have offered $24 per share for the Warner Brothers company, which will round up at around $60 billion, of which David Zaslav thought it as quite low and therefore turned down the offer. So it's quite interesting seeing that not just them, but also you have Comcast, who is the mother company or the parent company of Universal, NBC Universal, has also expressed interest for the company, and not just the Warner Brothers side, but also they have much interest in also the Discovery side and the cable aspect as well. And recently, it was brought to light that David Zaslav and the team were looking at splitting the company into two pairs, where you're going to have the Warner Brothers and DC and other division be on its own, whereas Discovery will also be a separate company and potentially spin off Warner Brothers to be sold off, whereas sold off to another media giant, whereas Discovery would be perhaps sold off to the shareholders of the company. But now with this unsolicited efforts, unsolicited offers being made by some of these media titans, even with Netflix in the mix, it looks like the board and David Zaslav are considering all options to potentially see the best value of an offer they can get when they potentially consider merging, keeping the company as it is to sell to the best bidder. Currently, there is no timeline indicating as to when this potential acquisition would go through, but it looks like they may potentially go through with the splitting of the companies into two separate, businesses altogether. But it looks like whatever offers they have been made, which has not been made public, seems very lucrative enough for Warner Brothers and the board to really want to consider it, and that is quite an interesting thing to see. So all these can be found in the Hollywood Reporter articles, and even quite some interesting articles also. This has been covered in quite some interesting articles in the BBC website. So that is quite an interesting thing to find out. So the media industry, just as what is happening now, why this is happening is the fact that the media industry is trying to consolidate, to compete, particularly in the streaming era, seeing that all the major, giants of a company are all sort of, trying to put their house in order to fiercely compete in this streaming war era. So it is quite interesting. And Warner Brothers have found themselves in quite some significant debt, even though in recent years they seem to be making some giant strides in box office returns, having been successfully, have their films, about 7 or 8 of their films, open to the number one at the box office, and with an opening weekend of over $40 million each, and have gone on successfully to make over $100 million for all of their about 13 films that they've released this year. And also they are the first company to have made $4 billion in revenue, potentially, revenue for this year. So that is quite interesting. Let me know what you think with regards to Warner Brothers trying to potentially sell the entire company as a whole without splitting it. And if Warner Brothers Discovery is sold, which potential buyer, whether Netflix, Comcast, or Paramount Skydance, do you think would be the best or worst fit, and why? Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. So before we move on to the next story, we have another Oscar submission, story in the mix. And this has to do with the Nigerian film titled My Father's Shadow, submitted as the best international film, international feature film, for the UK, not Nigeria. And that is quite an interesting development. And for this reason, we would cover this particular story, and this actually is captured in an article titled The Nollywood, in an article or website titled The Nollywood Reporter, not to be confused with the Hollywood Reporter. And this is what they had to say. So, My Father's Shadow named UK official Oscar selection. Directed by Akinola Davis Jr., the history-making film ends its theatrical run as it becomes the United Kingdom's official Oscar submission. And there is a screenshot or a shot of the film. So My Father's Shadow, the feature debut from Akinola Davis Jr., has been selected as the United Kingdom's official Oscar submission for Best International Feature at the 98th Academy Awards, making it the first Nigerian story to receive the honor. The announcement comes just days after the Nigerian Official Selection Committee announced it would not submit any film for this year's Oscar race. The film, a co-production between Movie Element Pictures and Fatherland Productions, made history earlier this year when it premiered at the Cannes Film Festival as Nigeria's first film to screen in the Uncertain Regard competition. It went on to earn a special jury mention. In a statement shared on Instagram, the director wrote, "To all Nigerians who watched it in theaters, thank you. As the first country in the world to show the film widely in cinemas, our theatrical run served as the qualifying run for this submission. The film stars Sope Durisu alongside Godwin Egbo and Chibuike Marvelous Egbo. Set over the course of a single day, it follows two young boys who journey with their estranged father from a rural Nigerian village to Lagos, Nigeria, during the 1993 election crisis, a period marked by social unrest and political uncertainty." So this indeed is a big news, if I should say, and not just the big news, but the fact that this happens to be Nigeria's first film ever to enter into not just Cannes, but to actually enter into the Uncertain Regard, competition, and that is quite a big win for Nigeria. And it's quite an irony that Nigeria is not presenting a film this year into the Best International Feature Oscar race. And for that reason, moments after the announcement was made by the commission, the Film Commission of Nigeria, the UK presented this particular entry for themselves into the Oscars race. So that is quite an interesting thing. And it is indeed a film that has received such high praise, not just in the Cannes Film Festival circuit, but the number of prestigious film festivals that it has participated in, it seems to have received high praise with regards to this film. And there's been the very debut film, maiden film for Akinola Davis Jr. shows the power of his potential, of his talent, that indeed speaks volumes as to perhaps one of the African film directors to watch, not just on the African stage, but on the global stage. And that is quite amazing. And even though this is a film being presented by the UK for the Best International Feature, category, for the UK, it is still a big win for Nigeria and, if I should say, Africa. And we are hoping that indeed, come January 22nd, of next year, when the short list of nominated films are picked, we hope that this will be among the 15 selected for the Best International Feature Oscar race. So there you have it. This indeed wraps up the Oscar Minute for today's episode. Let me know your thoughts by leaving your thoughts on this particular submission in the comment section below. So we move on from this story to another exciting story, particularly for the Hollywood film industry. And this has to do with the California Film Commission, truly by their word, incentivizing a number of film productions to be shot in Hollywood. And you would note that in this year, Trump has, well, depending on which side of the aisle you may stand, you may say has threatened the film industry, or perhaps with a desire to bring, rightfully so, bring films back to be shot in Hollywood. He did threaten 100% tariffs on all films shot outside the US, not Hollywood, but outside the US. And in response to that, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, did put in place a very handsome tax incentive for all films who intend to shoot in Hollywood. And that indeed is the right thing to do, seeing that no film industry in the world would want to tone down the incentives that they are offering, not just to Hollywood, but to all film makers around the world to come to shoot on their shores. It is indeed a good counter offer to keep films to be shot in Hollywood, and that is quite an interesting thing to do. And one of such films to have received this particular incentives has to do with Michael Mann's sequel, most anticipated sequel, and that is Heat 2, shot over 30, about 30, is it over 30 years ago or 40 years ago, 30 years ago. This film has received a $37.2 million tax incentives due to the fact that it's going to be shot in the state of California, and that is quite a good thing to see, because over the years, particularly this year has been the lowest time ever where jobs have been taken away from Hollywood, and so literally it's gotten to its lowest, and it has come at the right time to sort of boost the morale of the industry in Hollywood. And I think that is quite good to bring about highly competitive nature in the global space. And I'm happy that they are doing something to be able to bring back, productions into Hollywood. Also, regardless, there will still be some going outside America, but for those who decided to shoot in Hollywood, they have received quite some interesting incentives. And these tax incentives would actually go in the long term to help the studios beat down costs relatively to the budgets that they originally had in mind for it. And that is quite interesting. So this particular for Michael Mann's production, that is Heat 2, this award will support a 77-day shoot in Los Angeles, and it is expected that he cast 40 main, actors, as well as, recruit 800 crew members. So this is quite an interesting concept. There's an interesting incentives with this expectations from the productions as well. So the film now at the United Artists is said to be a prequel, but also a sequel based on the best-selling 2022 novel written by Michael Mann himself, together with Meg Gardiner. And the original Heat was famously shot in LA, so it looks like this film is coming right back home to shoot at the very place this would happen. So obviously, I don't know whether you're going to have Al Pacino and Robert De Niro coming back to reprise their roles one way or the other, or maybe an entirely different take on this particular one. But obviously, just as they have said, it's going to be a prequel, so it will precede this with potentially fresh new actors altogether. Yeah. So this initiative is quite interesting. If you read, the Hollywood has published all these. Let me just quickly go through it to showcase what this article has in mind. So briefly, let's take a look at the Hollywood article, and this is what it has to say: that Michael Mann's Heat 2 nabs 37 million. Jumanji sequel also gets 44 million in California tax credits, and that is the highest to date. So it goes on to read that 10 major features were included in this round. the state saw a 200% jump in applications to get filming subsidies. And then your short is Michael Mann interacting with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, who were the main stars of this film. Let's read on. Michael Mann's Heat 2 and the next installment to Sony Pictures' Jumanji headlined the first round of movie subsidies to Hollywood after California's historic expansion of the entertainment tax credit program, a bid to revitalize production in the state. In total, 52 films will get $334 million in incentives for shooting in California, the Film Commission announced on Tuesday. They are projected to generate $1.4 billion in economic activity across businesses with ties to the entertainment industry and employ 8,900 cast and crew members. Most of the filming will take place in Los Angeles, where shooting levels are at an all-time low. So it seems that this indeed has come at the right time to help salvage the California film industry. And I think it's good because the California film industry indeed has been the torchbearer when it comes to excellent, for lack of a better word, practices when it comes to the film industry. So they have been bearing the torch for a long time. And personally, I wouldn't want to see them, tank so low that they won't be able to survive. So I'm happy that this incentives is being put in place. That is not to say that other companies or countries outside Hollywood or America wouldn't kindly compete to win away jobs from Hollywood. But I'm glad that finally Gavin Newsom and the state is trying to put things in place to also keep jobs at Hollywood, which have been the torchbearer or the trailblazer when it comes to, productions of such magnitudes and all that. So it's quite interesting. If you get opportunity, read Deadline. Deadline has published a detailed look as to all the productions that have received or that have been approved with regards to these incentives, and has detailed the number of cast and crew that ought to be employed and all. Just to quote briefly from the Deadline article, I won't put it on screen, but to quote from that, this is what he has to say, that a paragraph says that the 52 films from both studios and independents are expected to see around 8,900 cast alone, and crew hired in total. 8,900 cast and crew hired in total, just as the Hollywood Reporter article did say. And it also went on to say that with 46,400 background performers measured in days work, over 1,664 filming days scheduled, statewide. So getting specific, check out the tax incentive allocations each film is conditionally getting, plus the spending and employment reach they are expected to have. So the Deadline article provided a much more detailed look as to the breakdown of all the jobs it's going to end up creating, both in front of the camera and behind, and also the background actors or, direct or indirectly related, employment to this particular production. So I'll leave the link in the description below so that if you want to take a detailed and more look at it, you can do so. So that is quite a big day for Hollywood once again, and I'm happy for this. So the bigger plan or the bigger picture for this whole thing is this is part of California's revitalized effort to compete with other states and countries for major film productions. And obviously it's going to end up generating over $1.4 billion in revenue when this is finally done. So let me know what you think about this. With a 37 million tax credits for Heat 2, how important are these state incentives for major, films getting made today? Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comments section below. And now moving on from all these stories we've spoke about, we are now coming to Africa, the motherland, and one of Africa's biggest film industry in terms of best practices, perhaps even has the best practices in terms of the industry and infrastructure, is South Africa. And one of the major events in the India movie calendar has to do with the South African National Film and Television Awards. And this happens to be the third annual awards being organized. And they have finally gone ahead to open actually a portal to inviting actually audiences who want to see their film win by voting on those portals. So let's take a brief look as to some of the films, what they have in mind in terms of the, how to go about the process of voting and all. So quickly, we will check out the movie block, and these are images of past events that have some of the winners, taking photos. And then we move on to say that the third annual Film and TV Awards South Africa 2025 voting now open. Cast your vote today. So he goes on to talk about how to join the South African Film Awards voting, providing all the URLs and the whatnots. So let me just read the first paragraph that says that the National Film and Television Awards South Africa have just opened their doors to the public. After weeks of anticipation, the organizers lifted the embargo and launched South Africa Film Awards voting today. Fans can now support their favorite shows and movies on the official website. And this article was published on October 17, and that was just this past week. So it is still being opened, and I think it's going to end its voting on 20th November 2025. So if you are watching, just take note that this particular opening portal will end on, November 20th. So if you want to go vote for your favorite TV show or your favorite film show, this is the right time to do so. Otherwise, you may not be able to vote after. So that's quite interesting, and I'm happy for this event. At least it gives the opportunity for films from South Africa to be commended or awarded for the good job they've done, for the production value they've given to all these films and television industry. And South Africa happens to be one of the booming, perhaps in terms of its vitality, one of the booming film industry aside Nollywood. And I'm excited that these events are being organized to credit films that are doing well in terms of its performance and its likability among audiences and perhaps industry personnel as well. So this is a fantastic opportunity, and I believe that it is a key event to recognize these productions. So do your best to go vote for the film that you so like, so that you can see your favorite film win. And all too soon, we have come to an end of today's exciting episode, covering stories from Hollywood, starting with the first story of Warner Brothers finally, an open secret though, but finally being, with the leadership of Warner Brothers admitting that they are considering on putting it on sale due to the unsolicited offers being given them, to the story of Michael Mann's film receiving $37.2 million with regards to the sequel of Heat 2, same as other 51 projects that will be shot in Hollywood receiving such massive tax incentives. And then to the last story of South Africa organizing their third annual, NFTA event. So this brings me to an end of this episode. Thanks for joining for this episode, and I'll be coming your way again tomorrow with today with another live stream of stories from around the globe, both from the African front and international scene. My name is Papa Otu, and this has been the Film Mandate. I'll see you soon.